Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Celia Rathas. This is the Monday morning devotional for Summit Church Durango. And those of you that are coming in and tuning in from different places, thank you for joining me. If you're watching this not in the morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. I am the Director of Children and Family Ministries at Summit Church in Durango. And I get to do the Monday morning devotionals with you guys each week. And I don't know about you, but this last week felt like it went on forever. I was just thinking and trying to figure out, did I do the devotional last week? What happened in between? Because it feels like it's been at least 2 weeks. So if you're like me and last week just drug on, we're finally in a new week. Congratulations, you survived, you've made it. And I'm saying that just as much to me as I am to you. So this week, our memory verse is Matthew 7:11. So if you want to follow along with me, it says this: "So if you, sinful people, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your heavenly Father give good gifts to those who ask him?" Now, I love this verse because I can only imagine what kind of good gifts God can give us when we ask, and they're boundless. But something that this verse has always, I guess, made me think about is that gift giving is not my love language. Receiving gifts and giving gifts, while I appreciate them and I'm very thoughtful in the gifts that I give to other people, it is not the primary way that I show love to others. And so this verse is it's difficult because I'm like, well, but God, that's not the way that I show people that I love them, is by these good gifts. But I think about, what does the phrase good gifts mean? Does it mean exactly that, wrapping a present and handing it on to someone else? Or does it mean every action, every response, every quality time and acts of service that I give to other people? And so it just makes you think about these things. And this last sermon, this past weekend, Jeff did a sermon and interviewed Benji. Now, I apologize because I don't know his last name and I didn't write it down, so that's my fault. So I'm sorry. But Benji and Jeff talked about being a 2 on the Enneagram. We're studying the Enneagram, and it's for those of you that don't know the Enneagram, it's a tool to really help you learn more about yourself. But what I love about it is that it points you back to who Jesus is, and Jesus encompasses all aspects of the Enneagram. And again, a couple weeks ago, Eli had this prayer that through this tool and through reading our Bible and through all of this, transformative work would be done. But he said restorative work to transform us both in and through, so that we can bless people. And I just love that. I feel like that was something that has stuck with me over the last 2 weeks since he prayed that. But what kind of restorative work does God have in store for you? What kind of internal things are you working on or struggling with, or good gifts that God has given you that both transform you inwardly, but also that work can be shown through you unto others? I mean, just like incredible things. And so Benji, I loved hearing his story. I think part of me loved it because I have 4 sisters, and one of my sisters is a strong 2. And one of their greatest fears is being unlovable, which to me, I look at her and I'm like, oh my gosh, you are the most lovable person that I know. And yet, oftentimes she doesn't feel that. Oftentimes, she feels like she has to work for it. And Benji was sharing that same thing where he's like, if there is another person in the room, I'm immediately thinking about what are their needs? How can I meet them? And it's this to-do list of how can I help them? And also, how can they love me? How can I ensure that they love me? That life can't go on without me. And he talked about too, just like doing the work. He used that phrase over and over again, doing the work. And I think what I was hearing from him was that in learning more about himself, he was learning more about all these good gifts that God has given him and blessed him with, and will continue to bless him with when he rests in God. When he rests in all that God has given him and created him to be. He used this term, resting in his belovedness. I just want that to sink in for a second, because I think a lot of us don't know what that truly feels like, to rest in God's loving nature of you exactly as you are. Oftentimes we have this picture that God is, correcting us in some way. He's leading on this path to sanctification, which is hard, which means that there are some things in our lives that we are, cutting out or curbing or correcting. And it's this endless work of taking that next step forward to be more like Christ and to reflect more of him. But in doing that, on that path, we forget that God fully loves us just as we are. He created us to be exactly who we are. And so when he said that, I had to take a deep breath. I was like, resting in your belovedness, God, what does that look like? Is that where those good gifts are? Is that where you're pulling me into? And so this last week, maybe the reason it was so long is it was a hard week. There were a lot of things that came onto my plate or came out of left field that I wasn't anticipating. And so I felt like I was in this like emotional turmoil. I was combining this, whatever. And this emotional turmoil last week, which just was difficult. And it took a toll. And so I actually decided that I was going to hike engineer on my one day off. I thought, you know what? 3 years ago, I hiked it with 2 other friends, and we didn't summit because a huge storm rolled in, and we got to, I think it's called Eagle's Nest, that little kind of fort thing. We got just beyond that, and we saw these huge clouds roll in, and we thought, oh my gosh, we need to start the descent now. And on the way down, we got hailed on, and which is pretty much my usual. Anytime I'm hiking on a mountain, I'll get hailed on, and this big storm comes out of nowhere. But we didn't summit it. And for 3 years, I've been thinking about that and just thinking, I am going to do this. Like, this is something that I need to do for me. And so I set about to do it. Saturday was my day off, and I said, okay, I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to get to the trailhead, and I'm going to hike it. Mainly, too, because I had been hearing from so many people that the flowers were peaking. And that they were absolutely gorgeous, and that now is the time to do it. And so I went. I made it to the trailhead at about 8:30 in the morning. And for me, the hike is part of the journey. It's part of the experience. I'm not a hike from point A to point B because I want to get to point B. I'm going to enjoy the footsteps traveled to get to point B. So I'm not one who just charges on ahead. I stop, I take pictures, I look around, I stop for snack time, just like things that I'm like, I'm not going to feel guilty about the way that I do things. And I was by myself. So it's like, it's me, myself, and I. Of course I can do this. But it was so amazing and rejuvenating because along the way, it was like, God bless me with this good gift. God bless me with this good gift. And it was every interaction with a person, every smile that I shared with them, every pleasantry of, hey, how's it going? Have a good hike. Just like those kinds of things that are so vanilla and yet brought me so much joy. There was a tree, a tiny little tree that was like this big, growing out of a massive boulder. I was like, how does that work? I probably sat there looking at it for about 5 minutes. Just like, this is so unique and so marvelous. God, you are so good. This tree is thriving in this rock. I mean, it was like those kinds of things that I would see. And yes, the flowers were beautiful. But the thing that really got to me and kind of also fed into our family activity this week is random acts of kindness. I shared a link with you about, and I'll make sure to include it in the comment section as well, but about like this is a bingo activity. It's a fun game. You can print it off of that link. It's free. Or you can create your own as a family and you can stick it on the refrigerator. And each time you do one of those acts of kindness, you personally have your set of stickers, your other, sibling or mother or father or, everything else. You all have your own personal stickers and you put it on there. First one to bingo gets a prize, gets a hug. I don't know. It can be simple. It can be fun. It can be encouraging. Think outside the box. But I can honestly say I wasn't thinking about that when I was on my hike. I was only thinking about how can I rest today and what does this look like from God? And so I'm hiking, having a great time. It's a beautiful day. And then I get to the point where the paths separate. You can go on the engineered trail that will take you around, or you can go and summit. Well, this whole plan was to summit. I was never going to just like go for a nice hike. I was like, no, I'm getting to the top of that mountain. And so I take that path and I decide to stop and take a look around and just take it all in. And I look around and it's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, the views are incredible. Those of you that haven't made it to engineer yet, please go. It is so worth it. But as I'm taking in the view behind me, engineers behind me, and the views in front of me, this girl comes up and she's walking her dog and she goes, hey, did you summit? And I was like, well, no, but I plan to. And so she's like, oh yeah, I hope I can too. And from then on, I mean, like, again, just a pleasantry, but we started hiking the hardest part of the hike together. And it was just kind of this mutual, she's alone, I'm alone, we're going to encourage each other. And we became each other's cheerleaders. We can do this. Like we would leapfrog, she would keep going. She would make the pace or keep the pace, set the pace, whatever the word phrase is. And I'd be trucking along. Then she would pause, catch her breath. I'd pass her, keep the pace, keep the pace, keep the pace. And then I would pause. She would come around. And she had this cute little dog with her named Bear. And we did that the whole rest of the way. But I kid you not, I just am so thankful for Alex because, yes, I could have done that part by myself. I absolutely would have figured out a way to make it to the top because I'm determined. But to have someone who could lighten the mood, who could laugh, find the irony in some of the things that we were doing and how preposterous. I mean, we were straight up rock climbing at points to get to the top of engineer. And we were both like, yup, this is happening. Mind you, she has a small dog who's about 20 pounds that she had to put in a pack and carry up this mountain. So I took her backpack so I could, so she wouldn't have, 25 plus pounds added to her. But at one point we're like stretched on the side of this mountain, like holding on. She's putting the dog in the pack, and I'm like holding her as the mountain is behind me. We're like flattened against the side. I mean, and we're just laughing. It's one of those moments that it's like, well, we probably should have planned better, but it's okay because we're here now and we're going to breathe through this thing and we're going to make it to the other side. But neither of us, again, it's not like we couldn't have done it by ourselves, but it was so much more joyful because the other was involved. A new friend came along. We made it to the top, and oh my word, it was beautiful. It was absolutely breathtaking. And it was amazing for me because I was like, this has been something that I've been wanting to do for now 3 years. And finally, I made it. And God was just like, here you go, Celia. Not only was this whole process a gift to you, but look at all that is around you. Take it all in because I have so many good gifts for you. And you're just this big, and the world is all around. I mean, it was just absolutely incredible. And who knows if Alex and I remain friends or if that was just what we both needed in that moment. God's good gift to each other. But I encourage you to think about and take the time to rest in your belovedness. Take that time to see those little things. We often talk about glory sightings, which I encourage you again to write those down, jot those, share those with friends. Those glory sightings help us to see these good gifts. And how much better are we? How much better is God to us in those good gifts than we are to each other? And so if you haven't taken a moment to sit in that thought, to think about what that looks like for you, to do the work as Benji says, to be faithful and trust that God will be with you always. He will give you rest. And he loves you. He loves you so very, very much. And he wants you to feel that. So anyways, again, I'm going to end with the memory verse that I started with. So we're full circle. And again, the memory verse is this for this week. So if you sinful people know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your heavenly Father give good gifts to those who ask him? Take time to think about that this week, to meditate and pray and say, God, show me your way. Show me those good gifts. Encourage me in the way that I should go. Bless me and help me to be a blessing to others. I love you all. Take care. Hopefully this week is a good one for you. Praying for me as well. But I hope it's a great one. I will see you all next week.